I guess first just tell me a little bit about your Frederick Douglass organization.
Sure. Frederick Douglass Foundation is a grassroots political organization that has 22 chapters across the country. We like to say we believe in righteousness and justice, liberty and virtue. And we got started just after the election of President Barack Obama. Maybe about 5 or 6 African American leaders, many of whom were involved in party politics around the country, decided, what should we do after the election of a African American president who did not represent kind of our values and what we thought that America was all about. And so we came together in Washington D.C., talked, discussed, prayed, and the result was the start of what is now called the Frederick Douglass Foundation, which really exists to help train grassroots leaders to be more engaged in the political process, whether they are activists, whether they are candidates, or whether they have a desire just to be involved in state policy. And so that's kind of how we got started. Tim Johnson and I were the co-founders, and it's been a crazy ride ever since.
So you cover a lot, but is there any specific issue that you all kind of come together on that you really want to change or reform, and how would you do it?
Sure. Well, as a faith-based organization, we definitely look at matters of life and the family as being really important, particularly in the African American community. After almost 50 years after what's called the Moynihan Report, which was alarmed at the breakdown of the African American family, and at that point it was just, I think, 25% of black families were broken families at that time, and now it's over 70%, right? So we look at that as something that is a really important piece for us to look at. How do we look at policies in states or at the federal level that strengthen the family as opposed to erode the fabric of the family? It should be noted, even Frederick Douglass himself said that it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. And we feel like that while it may not be easy, we want to invest our time and efforts in states and across the country to affirm policies that strengthen the family as opposed to policies that erode the family.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting that you say that. David Azerrad, who spoke here earlier, I actually heard him speak before about how if you're filling out a survey, you shouldn't put, Caucasian, whatever that is. You should actually start off with what kind of family you came from, because it would be more accurate if you do it that way, which makes sense.
I mean, if you look across the board, intact families, regardless of what community they come from, usually have higher rates of going to college. If you are from an intact family, you have lesser chance of going to prison. I mean, all of the positives are accentuated in if you are from an intact family. Mm-hmm. And so we feel like that's really important. In addition to that, education is really huge.
Right.
Frederick Douglass was somebody who was kind of a self-educated American who rose to the ranks of becoming one of the greatest abolitionists in our history. And so education is really important for us. How do we look at communities that are broken, communities that are damaged, and how do we institute and encourage policies that affirm educational choice, whether that's homeschooling, whether that's private school, religious school, charter schools. We feel like that those things are important to have a pathway to success, and so education would be another area that we really emphasize.
Right. And I guess they talked about the church a lot today. How much of a role do you think the church plays in, laying the foundation for families to have education and have children grow up in a way that will more support the America that we want?
Sure. I think that we, particularly in Black America, it's the one institution that we've always owned. So you find that schools came out of the churches, you find that the first businesses came out of the African American church. So the church is vital within any community to see strong families, to see successful schools, to see thriving businesses. And so we feel like that institution needs to be affirmed, encouraged, and protected. And I think that if we see a healthy church, we'll see healthy families. If we see a healthy and thriving church, we'll see healthy and thriving schools. And so we think that it's extremely important to have that aspect, particularly when you talk about issues of righteousness and justice within our community.
Very nice. Is there anything else you just want to add at the very end?
I just want to say that I feel like that these type of forums, this Black Conservative Summit, are extremely important for the exchange of ideas, for affirming good things that need to be emphasized for us to see success within our communities that will ultimately make a strong America. I guess I would close by saying, quoting Martin Luther King Jr., who said that the church must remember that it is not the master nor the servant of the state, but rather it is the conscience of the state. And if the church does not recapture its prophetic zeal, it becomes an irrelevant social club without moral or spiritual authority.